This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'd like to welcome Harriette Suchet to the show this morning.
Yes, good morning from home, sort of.
Ah, such a good place to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I had a couple
decoded missive. Okay,
oh, beautiful. Yeah, we're going to hit that next. I have a little bit of laundry I wanted to get out there for anybody who has not seen this movie yet. It's called Mauritanian, and Jodie Foster received either nominations for awards or awards. I honestly only got involved with watching it because I saw that Jodie Foster was in the cast. I haven't seen her make anything for quite some time. I really just was going to check out and see how she's aging and how she's doing and all of these things. And found myself completely engulfed in a movie which to me kind of looked like a patsy for the 9/11 events. I found it super interesting to note what we will do to people as a country, but we won't do it inside of our country. So basically the set of this is at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Now, when did we make friends with Cuba again, Harriette? Do you know?
Well, they're still considered a communist country, so I think we made friends with Cuba again kind of right after circa 1970, after all the hijackings back to Cuba. So it's still considered a communist country, but they've quietly tried to get some trade going, and so I think it's been a while.
That's what I remember, like back in the day, if you had a Cuban cigar, you could be in trouble. You could go to jail, or, there was some illegalities behind having it, but it was supposed to be the best cigar. And of course, anybody who had money had them. And I'm sure they weren't getting busted and put into prison, but did they exactly. I'm like, did they ever lift that ban or illegalities on the I bet this was a question for Nolan, but I know he's super busy with cases and deadlines that he's got to make by Monday, so I don't know that we'll see him today. But yeah, that would have been a great question for him. Either way, they basically, arrested this guy, took him from his home, and I'm guessing somewhere in Saudi Arabia by the looks of it, or East India. And they flew him out to Guantanamo Bay, where they basically tortured and hammered him. And the things that they do to him is just absolutely outrageous. So no wonder the whole get up for Guantanamo is in Cuba, because you couldn't get away with that in the United States. Still illegal to import in the U.S., they say, as far as Cuban cigars. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So you got to have some money to get your hands on them bad boys. But I know there are people out there still enjoying them. Either way, Jodie Foster comes in as his attorney and basically wins him the right to be released after 7 years of torture. Some of the most maddening things I've ever seen done to somebody. I literally sat there in awe. Not that I didn't know that this is kind of some of the tactics they do when they're trying to interrogate people, but more or less because you're visually seeing it, and it is based on a true story. So I would like everybody to, take a look at this and see what our country does. Either way, once she gets him released after 7 years of hell and torture, Barack Obama actually sets an executive order and holds him for another 7 years. And mind you guys, that he hasn't been charged with a darn thing. And that's why Jodie Foster was able to supposedly win his freedom. And the court said, let this man go. If you're not going to charge him, you have to let him go. And of course, we see Barack Obama, it states at the end of this that he literally made sure sure that this man didn't leave for another 7 years. So for 14 years of his life, he lost all of his freedoms, was treated horrendously by the United States, and all for what? In the end, he was released. He did write a book in regards to this, but I was watching it. If you watch the end clips, you get to see the actual gentleman with the different books from different countries and languages, and it is so heavily redacted. And that's one of the things they said at the end, is that even though he wrote his book, the government took their black redaction pen and took away everything that they said he couldn't produce, which blows my mind, because we're supposed to be the country of freedom of speech. I'm just at a loss, you guys. We had you
something.
Yeah.
Can I interject something really quick? Okay, we've had in our family, and I have them now. We've always called them the beer glasses from Cuba. My father went to 1962 Cuba as a merchant seaman and got these. And it was supposed to be around midnight. I'm trying to remember what the story is. So I had from Cuba in 1962.
That's crazy. And that's what, literally before? Okay, so I'm getting a note that says JFK signed a law that prohibited U.S. citizens from doing business with Cuba. That's the only reason why Cuban cigars are illegal in U.S. So if we've started to open up trade and association with them, and these are still illegal, obviously it must be their mainstay. It must be something that they produce hugely, and they don't want the United States patronizing these individuals for whatever reason. But that takes us back to SBTC, right? Was Subic Bay, the whole Bush thing and everything that happened. I want to say, when was that? That was in the 60s, right? When they went over and burnt down all the casinos, all the mobs. Well, I guess that was obviously Fidel Castro, right? That burnt down everything. Gotcha. So,
well, there were communist countries like what was going on in Vietnam. That was beginning in Vietnam. I mean, really, the war was getting really underway, and that's my father took part in trying to get people out and stuff out of 1962 in that part of the world also. So it's really strange to be talking about this. It hits home.
Right. And with the burning of all of the casinos and the, hotels and the things in Cuba, those were all owned by what? American mobsters?
I think it was a whole mess of people, but, definitely tied to America, because it was only, 90 miles away from Florida, which is the closest coastline of USA. So, I think there was a lot of people, a lot of businesses connected, and they always had, from what I understand, the mob had their 2% or 5% of all those businesses.
Right. So you buck that system and you burn it down so that they don't make their money that they're making. Of course, now all of a sudden we see politics step in, and you're a communist country. Ay, my vey. Well, you'll enjoy this YouTuber. He's at Ed Edwards Ciphers, which I've discussed with him a couple different times. He's the one that doesn't have any handwriting on Ed Edwards, but insists that Ed Edwards is the Zodiac and that he has figured out his ciphers and all of these things that I thought was extremely interesting at first. And he reached out to me based on last week's show, and he said, "Now you're talking my language. While I'm not a question documents examiner, I've been studying the writing style of both the Zodiac and another certain serial killer." Now, is that certain serial killer supposed to be Ed Edwards, and that was supposed to be I wonder why he said certain certain serial killer. I don't even know that they have any information on Ed Edwards as him being a serial killer. I guess I should probably look this guy up. Either way, he didn't have any handwriting on him for me to look at, but he says he's been, and I don't, so I literally don't understand. He says, "I've been studying the writing style of both the Zodiac and another certain serial killer." If he is talking about Ed Edwards, I've already asked him if he has handwriting. He said no. So who's the certain serial killer? And then he says, "I've long wondered about the S, or as they're popularly known, He says popularly. I don't call them candy cane Fs, and I'm a handwriting expert, but he says popularly known candy cane Fs. I found them very interesting, and I have a theory of what they actually are. My problem with this statement is that obviously he is withholding some information, acting like he wants to give information, but not actually giving any information in this post. I mean, please, you guys, if you're going to come on and you're going to post some type of a comment, at least give me the evidence or the inference of what it is that you're talking about so that we can have an actual conversation. So I actually hit him back up and I said, if you aren't a handwriting expert, how can this be your language? Certainly is mine. So I would love to get your take on the candy cane Fs, even though we weren't discussing them on this video. So I don't know. He was not.
Yeah,
that's what he's calling them.
Those, but he's calling them the candy cane F. Anyway,
they're shaped like a candy cane. Maybe
it's something I posted online. But anyways.
I have no idea. My point being is that an F by nature is formed like a candy cane. I mean, look at your font. The F is a candy cane. We don't refer to it as a candy cane. It's called an F, and it's called a lowercase f at that. So when I hit him back up with that, instead of and I asked him, I'd love to get his take on it, right? That's my response. He says, well, that's an interesting question. I'll try to explain why. Donald and Betty Hardin were amateurs, yet they broke a Zodiac cipher when the FBI, CIA, and other professionals could not. Hold up. Wait a minute. Is he full of himself? Are you trying to sell me the single bullet theory? You believe that the FBI and the CIA couldn't solve a simple substitution cipher? You've lost your gourd.
That was all staged. I mean, looking back, I can see it was staged. And I think it's one of the people that he just named. He was a naval expert. He just, happened to be also teaching in a school. If I remember, one of the Hardin's side of their stories. So he wasn't just your average amateur.
Exactly. And if we think about the simple substitution, all he had to know is about simple substitution ciphers, and that the most used letter of the alphabet will appear more in a message than any other letter of the alphabet. So it was more of a mathematical equation, right? Determine which letters used most, plot that in for the most symbols that are similar, and then work your way outward from there to the next letter that's most used, and so on and so forth, until you actually start to get a rhyme and reason to this message. It doesn't, I guess if you want to call him a layman, because, well, you're saying that he has experience with it, right?
Yeah, it's some kind of experience in the past, and they're now teachers. So I said,
and history.
He wasn't exactly your average layman, but I can tell you it to be a fact that, because I was doing it too as a kid, you did a lot of word puzzles, because you didn't have like how we have things online now that is quick, bam, 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 and you did use your head, just like you said. You do a trial and error until you get it right, and this the Hardins kind of knew how to do this, at least the
exactly. So I wouldn't call them laymen, and I wouldn't call them, they were able to solve it over the FBI and CIA. You just literally called the FBI and the CIA absolutely worthless in that one single statement. And I highly doubt that they were not able to solve something as simple as a substitution cipher when the end resolve in 2021 or something like that, when David Ornchak claimed that he used period 19 substitute cipher, which was kind of a diagonal type solve basically to this message.
Yeah, he tried something, but I got the solved, and I think we covered it months ago now.
Well, we covered it.
Gave him the information, and it took what, 3 people 16 years to solve it? Come on.
Right. And so he goes on to say David Ornchak considers himself an amateur and not a professional cryptologist. Well, you can listen to what David Ornchak says all you want all day long. But this man has been up in the middle of this entire freaking scenario, creating web toys and all kinds of things to break codes since well before I got involved.
Yes, agreed. Yes, that's true. That was
And
the
then
original ad that he had on ZodiacKiller.com, and Tom White was supporting him. He's not your average cryptographer, but he was using computers to try to break and crack things. And
that tells me you have a bit. Well, but that tells me you're above average on this type of stuff. If you're creating an algorithm for a computer program that's supposed to be able to break code, don't call yourself an amateur. Like, how many people could do that? Like, on the norm? Not many. He did go on and say he and his team broke another Zodiac cipher. So those could be two instances where amateurs were able to do something that professionals couldn't. Boy, you're full of yourself. If the professional,
I'd love to have this guy. Let's have this Ed Edwards guy on your show.
Right?
I think I understand where these people are kind of coming from. I hate using that term, but he's just trying to sell his product. But and good luck with that. But come on and have a discussion.
He's trying to sell himself. And the crazy thing is that he's not doing a good job of selling himself, because if you have a take on the candy cane Fs and you throw this kind of rhetoric back at me instead of that take on the candy cane Fs, then I think you're just messing with me. You're just wasting my time. Well, he goes on to say, I would imagine just one may be enough as an example, but those are two. No, I'm sorry, at Ed Edwards ciphers. Those are not two instances of lay people doing something that the government, the CIA, and the FBI couldn't do. He then, because I hadn't answered yet, comes back to say, I must apologize. I must have seen the part of the clip where you mentioned the candy cane Fs. I never mentioned candy cane Fs. He said, or just the Fs in particular may have triggered my memory of them. That's probably more true. I think that I think they're that important, actually. So I was both happy and impressed that you did speak about them. I didn't. And while I am not a professional, I'm just another person with an opinion. I do have an opinion on them. It would be hard to explain only in written correspondence because, in my opinion, they involve concepts of cryptography, which apparently neither you nor I may be professionals at. Well, then why are you going to give me your take on it? If you don't know what you're doing, you're not a professional, you're going to give me basically your opinion or your perception of what you think these Fs mean. In my mind, I mean, I get this every day. I took a case yesterday and they wanted to give me their perception of what they see in handwriting. They don't look at the same things that I do. So I had to stop them and say, look, you're not here to bias me or get me on your side or tell me all the things you find right or wrong about the handwriting. It's my job to determine that. So I'm going to, squash whatever you think you see, because I'm going to do this from a clean slate where I see what I see based on my experience and what I do as a professional. He finishes it off by saying, in a nutshell, however, it entails what may be missing. Okay. Especially when you compare the S to the actual Zodiac sigil. And he spelled this capital S-I-G-I-L. Do you know what he's talking about? I probably should have Googled the word.
He said, what? Repeat that again. What was the line? I-G-I-L?
S-I-G-I-L. He said, especially when you compare the Fs to the actual Zodiac sigil.
Sigil? What the hell is that? I'm sorry. I'm drawing a blank here.
I feel like, again, I probably should have Googled it to see if it was actually a word. Anyways, he says, apologies in advance, as I mentioned, because just to mention it will not make any sense. So I do apologize in advance. That's a whole lot of, that reminds me of some of the letters the Zodiac wrote.
All I know is I usually see a lot of acronyms when I'm narrowing down what I'm doing, and I would look something like that up. Is that Latin? What is it? Is it a real word? So,
I don't know. He just calls it the actual Zodiac sigil. Anyways, he goes on and he says, I would submit that I do feel that handwriting and its study are relevant, but I do feel that the application of cryptological concepts as they apply to handwriting may be very useful and a missing component. How can you say this if you're not even a professional at doing cryptoanalysis? I'm at a loss. Either way, I didn't get an answer, and that's what really upsets me the most, is because you spouted out about there is something behind this. You argue with me the ability of someone's take on what's been going on, and then you turn around and apologize to tell me that it won't make any sense if I try to tell you. So then why did you try to tell me? Oh, people.
He's made his point. He's making his mark somehow. Okay.
Right? Either way. All right. So enough of that. This brings us to a solve that you had recently given to me. I thought it came out in 1985. So my bad. I placed it in the wrong chronological order and have pulled it back to the forefront. I'll move it back to the 1965 era once we're done with it. But this was a letter that you skipped across. Where did you find this letter at, Harriette?
I was looking for the one that I worked on with you 10 years earlier, the
63
from the 1963, and it said ask Spencer and George Spencer, whatever. And I was trying to find that, and I couldn't find it anymore. We're the only ones apparently that have it. But I found this at Texas it's the Texas version of the JFK letters. And when I saw it, I almost, like you would say, fall out of your chair. But I was in the hospital then. I almost fell out of the hospital bed. And I looked at it and I said, I recognize the system 100%. And I sent it to you. And I was also in the back of my head thinking that this could look like Jimmy Carter's handwriting, because the last time some of us thought something like that, not you, but that it was Jack's system and handwriting, and it turned out, as I decoded it last fall, it was from Jimmy Carter. And so I didn't know what to use at the code keys for sure, but I started working on it because doing things like that when I was hooked up to machines kept my mind off of a lot of things that were going on. And it was really good, positive stuff for me. And I ended up finding out that per code that it's not only verifying the solve that you had from 1963. I mean, that your document exam said that was Jack's handwriting of the December 1963 from the Dallas and the Lancaster postmark, Dallas PD. This is saying that Jack wrote that, but that Jimmy Carter sent it for him. And it's for the Get Hoffa Squad and all kinds of unbelievable things. And it's also
okay.
saying,
So let's get into it before you try to explain it. So basically, I have the envelope here, and you had said, in my unprofessional doc examiner opinion, the envelope has Jack 101 and may be decodable. I did not find that it was Jack's handwriting, obviously, but you said, I'm not sure. Jack is in the Get Hoffa Squad, so maybe more than one involved. This takes us back to that theory that this is more of a group thing than it is just a single individual. You did say, FYI, I did find your Hit the Road Jack segment that had the Palmdale envelope. You did a show after this with the surprise info on the decode envelope. And I think that so either this envelope, or are you saying that the 1963 envelope actually related to Tippett body traded for JFK body, the Palmdale area where JFK was hid? Who shot him was Roselli, Brady, Bowers, and Civella from train tracks, etc.
A monster.
Right. But it's strange that it appears only you and I have a copy of this 12/3/63 envelope /note online. And I found this online 10 years ago. All this said, I wanted to decode that note. I did, and I'll send that. And then the 1988 McDonald's Zodiac communications decoded too this weekend, which you'll need to get those over to me because I don't believe I have those yet. But we're going to take a look at this envelope.
Okay.
So basically you stated all the information that you found on this particular envelope, correct? So things like Dallas Police Department Police Chief Jesse Edward Curry was the police chief at the time, police headquarters, municipal building. And then you allotted a number, obviously, to every single one of these particular letters in the communication. And that was to make sure that you don't double use them, right? Each one gets allocated with a number. And what's that? Okay.
It's just to make sure that I don't leave anything out. And if I have 500 symbols, I better have 500 matching. So that's why it's how I anagram.
So basically, taking all the information from that, you've assigned it a number, then you've turned around and you have created a message, and you've shown us that each one of the letters in this particular message has been accounted for via your system and the use of those particular letters. So you came up with a solve. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, I'm going to read the tail end one, the last one that's kind of like a pinkish and whitish at the bottom. So this is the message.
But I thought, what's this one that says Washington, Honorable N.E. New York Senator Kennedy? Okay, so that's where I'm at right now. This is the envelope, correct?
Yeah, this is just the envelope, and I just am blown away when I'm finishing this. And
okay,
anyways,
so go ahead and read it so we don't waste any time.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Washington, Honorable, New England, New York, Senator Bobby Kennedy. Sad you missing plenty, Mrs. DiMaggio, M for married, 1/14/1954, and that's when she was married. And then it says, President Kennedy, get Hoppa Squad. Next mission is railroad train tracks operator Lee Bowers Jr., and he's suggesting future over tomorrow's UPI, Pretty Cherry Joe Bates murder, i.e. then after, in year 1975, in newspaper, Whining Nut Jen for general manager, dog, International Brotherhood Teamsters Union, cappuccino lover, bum, Hoffa. And then he's saying, one, I sent DEC, December 3rd, 1963, Lancaster, California, letter and envelope, printed by NN, that's Nomenesio Jack Torrance, so that's his handwriting printing. You did the verification. Anyways, and then it's describing what's in there so he can verify whoever decoded this. Anyways, United States, 5 cents postage stamp, dark blue, red, bluish, black, U.S. Scott number 1240, issue date November 1, 1963, which is true. That's the stamp is on there. Bureau of Printing and Engraving, Giori Press, black ink clock received Dallas Police Municipal Building Annex 106, South Harwood, microdot T that is on the stamp. Anyways. Tuberculosis, support your Tuberculosis Association, National Tuberculosis Association, Cross of Lorraine, November 22nd, 63, President, this is what was in the solve, President Lincoln's body, 5 perforations, tippet head, plaster cast, 10.5 millimeters by 10.5 millimeters pictures. He's trying to say what they used as President Kennedy's pictures. Anyways, and then it said, two, I sent one, my handwriting, the one version of this, 1965 Police Department, Dallas, Texas, from my city, Plains, Georgia, location, NN, he's saying he did it in secret, Nomenesio, him, E8 military U.S. Navy pay grade, that's USN pay grade, James Carter, Jr. of Georgia, state senator and future president, 1976. It says all that.
Wow. That is crazy. So it's basically indicating, I mean, this is obviously 2 years after, so it's basically indicating what occurred with JFK, but then it's talking about the upcoming murder of Sherry Jo Bates, while stating that eventually in 1976, James Carter Jr. is slated to become our next president.
Yeah, and that's what's showing up in this 1965, and it's dated, I think, postmarked January 3rd, 1965. That is when Senator Bobby Kennedy went into the Hill and started serving as a senator.
Now, your dad, being in the Merchant Marines way back in the years, had indicated to you at one point that the presidency has already been decided upon up to 15 years in advance. I think that's something I've heard you say several times, correct?
Yes.
So
and
it
I
wouldn't
would
be...
argue with them. Yeah, I would argue with them often, and then I didn't want to argue with them too much. But anyways, yes, he would say that a lot.
So basically, we're looking at a 12-year difference or 11-year difference between when Jimmy Carter is going to become president and the mention of it in a 1965 communication, and that is within the 15-year time frame. And I can kind of see how that they've got this going as well. I mean, especially with these last few elections and Trump getting back into office and things like that, you can see how they set this ploy up. Very, very interesting. So this is the actual communication itself, and this is the letter that was contained inside. And it said, "Dear sir, I'm writing you this letter because it is true, and I am going to prove it when I get out of prison. I want to tell you this because I can prove it. Now hold your hat. I know who
misspellings in there.
I know. And yeah, he's got some interesting handwriting as well. I know who had JFK shot because I was a good friend of Harry Oswald. Jack Ruby was paid to kill Kennedy by the Lyndon Johnson, and Jack Ruby paid Harry Oswald. Kennedy, Jack Ruby promised to meet Harvey Oswald at the theater and give him, I don't know, I'm sorry, this must, it's so hard to read. What the Jack Ruby promised to pay him. So he's basically, it's almost as if he's trying to say that that Oswald was to be paid for actually having committed this crime.
But it's a lot. I started to try to solve that one, and it ended up sounding like a lot of repetitive nonsense. Only saying Harvey Oswald, Harvey Oswald, Harvey Oswald, Harvey Oswald, and that's what was happening on the TV. So I think it's almost as if he's saying that the rest, this is the code on the envelope is the most important, and the rest is nonsense about Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, it's I kept saying Harry and Henry because you can't read his writing. I'm like, what is he writing here? My goodness. So yes, so killing Kennedy, Harvey Oswald wanted me to go to the theater with him. So he's got all kinds of things going on in this letter, but you're right. It's very repetitive. He almost keeps saying the same exact thing over and over again instead of giving the information we're looking for. And that takes us actually to this solve that you were saying, which was more the pinkish color or look. And that was that the one that you just read?
Because the one that I read was a combination of both, but I just read, and it's one that's dated 3/25/25, and I put the two together because that's pretty much the best completed solve of what he's trying to get across. And he's confirming again what you identified from 1963.
Right. So the only thing we hadn't read out of this then is section number 2, right? I sent my handwriting.
I just read that, but that was blowing me away. It's saying he's going to be the president in 1976.
Right. More predictory stuff, basically, which we've been used to seeing in these cases. All right, well, then that brings us back to our next. We're going to go right back into some Texas murders. Again, everybody remember Jack is currently divorced from Nora at this point in time. We don't really see him until a little bit later, where he indicates that he's even working for Hewlett Packard yet. So again, we're still waiting to see that stuff pop up. But in June 7th of 1984, 30-year-old George H. Bud Sager Jr., West Dallas, Conroe, Texas, went missing. Sager withdrew money from his bank near IH-45 and Spring Cypress Road in Spring, Texas. This is the last time that he was known to have been seen alive. On July 3rd of 1984, Sager's truck was found abandoned in the parking lot of the Crossroads Shopping Center located at 1100 West Dallas, Conroe. Foul play was suspected at the time, and Sager was never heard from again. So this is more of a missing person. Then we have a skull that's found from a missing person in 2011. In 2010, MSCO cold case detectives obtained DNA from Sager's family members for upload into the DNA database known as CODIS. In 2011, a DNA match occurred with a skull found in Walker County, Texas. Investigations revealed that on December 18th, 1989, an individual picking up aluminum cans along FM 1375, approximately 9/10 of a mile west of IH 45 near Waverly area, discovered the skull on the side of the roadway. The skull was found to contain a short handwritten note stating that an unknown individual had found the skull in the woods but could not get involved. It appeared that the author of the note had moved the skull from the woods and placed it along the shoulder of the road where it might be discovered. This kind of sounds like Donna Lass to me.
This is reminding me of a lot of the other solves that I've done of some of these cold cases, and I was wondering how did they know that that things were moved and positioned in such a way. And now you're reading this, and it looks like somebody's trying to stage the crime scene. And if it's decodable, you might find some more information. But that's
well, maybe they were just. Maybe they were just growing pot in the woods, stumbled across this. It's not legal to grow pot in Texas, so they moved this skull well out of the way because.
Who would they be growing the pot for? Do you know? Up
it doesn't matter. That's just a hypothetical because it states that there was a note inside of it that said that the person didn't want to get involved. So if the person didn't want to get involved, there's a reason why they don't want to get involved. I'm not saying that they actually were growing pot. I'm just saying, what if, and they stumble across the skull, you're not going to invite the police up to your location where you can get busted. You're going to move it to another place, hoping that somebody gets, I guess, identified. I don't know. It would be interesting to see that note that was inside the skull.
I just wanted to say quickly, a lot of people say that the CIA, the marijuana that they were using, even in Jack's era, was being grown in certain regions here, and it was being grown for the CIA to do some weird things diplomatically to get the goods on people. So somebody like that would not want to get involved.
Right. There's a reason.
And my apologies to the victims.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least they were able to identify him. It the interesting part is that what was it, 1986 that Donna Lass's skull was found?
No, they say it was 1986, and
that's what I said.
How many decades to get it identified?
No, but that's what all I asked was 1986, and yes. 1986 was when her skull was found, but she went missing in 1971. He goes missing in 1984, and his skull is found in 1989. But again, by the freeway, which is pretty much, a central location or a location near where Donna Lass's skull was found as well. But hers was actually found in the woods. June 10th of 1984, approximately, Katrina DaCosta in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm not sure. This is back from 2009. I just threw in every single unsolved murder I can find. But we'll talk about it anyways in case it brings things back up for people to reminisce or research. It says remains of Swedish prostitute Katrina DaCosta on 19th of June 1954 to 1984 were found in Solna, north of Stockholm in the late summer of 1984. DaCosta had been dismembered and parts of her body in plastic bags were found 1 kilometer apart on 18th of July and the 8th of August. The case is known as Strickmorda. Oh yeah, I'm not trying that, guys. It actually means the dismemberment murder trial. How DaCosta died has not been established since vital organs, 1 breast, genitalia, and her head have not even been found. Wow. Extremely interesting, extremely brutal. It did say, I think I was looking at this to research the found heads because the SLA manifesto, which we know that the Zodiac wrote a letter in regards to SLA, is found in Sweden. And that was an interesting take or cross connection there, that the manifesto for the Symbionese Liberation Army was actually located in Sweden. So I wanted to also check for other Sweden murders just to see if there could be some type of a cross connection between it. June 21st of 1984, Christine Ann Bood, Riverbrook Drive, Forest Hill subdivision of Conroe, Texas. So we're starting to see a theme right now. This Conroe thing is a lot of these unsolved murders that are occurring. And it says she was last seen in the parking lot of the Inverness apartment complex located at 403 Longmire Road, Conroe, Texas, at approximately 2 a.m. Same date, an MCSO deputy was flagged down on I-45 at FM 1488 and alerted to what was thought to be a body in the roadway. The deputy responded and found the dead body of Bud lying in the roadway. The subsequent investigation and subsequent autopsy revealed that she had died from being struck by a vehicle. Evidence at the scene indicated that the striking vehicle turned around and reapproached Bud's body prior to fleeing the scene. And this was Conroe, Porter, and Springer, all pretty much within 30 to 40 minutes from Humble, Texas, which we will see, we did with the 2005 finale letter, the Humble, Texas reference. So there could be some cross connections here as well. But if the last place she was seen alive was in her parking lot, now she's being run over on the freeway. I mean, did they take her there and let her out of the car and then just proceed to mow her down? And then who is silly enough after hitting somebody to back up, turn around and go check them out, where to the degree that they would be seen by somebody? You don't have anything on Christine Bood, though, do you?
No, but that's very familiar territory, what I've done, many. But so I'm just wondering, is that also Robert Abel? Because that's the stuff he would do. It's God, but he got his,
Yeah, I still get confused because the finale letter said that Abel was not the devil that Blue City or League City Blue Fuzz was looking for, in a sense. And why would a serial killer take credit for a multitude of different unsolved killing sprees and give an out to somebody like Abel, especially if he was a killer, a serial killer, no less? Why would they take away that? And I want to say that Pat Serial, one of the profilers, probably for the FBI or something like that, was really interested in Abel as a potential for being the suspect. But here we have this taunting letter, which we know is Zodiac 101, stating that he's not the person you're looking for. So I get a little confused on that. Yeah, on July 29th.
I'm sorry, but if I remember right, Pat Serial was doing the BTK cases at the time and thinking that they were linked. And that's also, Jack is just, trying to point out that, your profile system is flawed.
That's so Zodiac 101.
and who was in jail at the time over thinking BTK? Dennis Rader was a Zodiac. That was Tom Voight. He got arrested for some things.
Who did?
So that was also, Tom Voight got, he was in that region trying to help prove that BTK was Zodiac. And Pat Serial was doing the links between the possibilities. So that Dennis and a lot of us on the message boards later on never let Tom Voight forget about that one.
So Tom Voight got himself arrested while trying to insinuate that the BTK bomber was the Zodiac?
That the BTK killer was the Zodiac, that Dennis Rader was actually probably the most likely suspect, and he got in trouble and he got arrested then.
And BTK, what does that acronym stand for again? Bind, torture, kill?
Bind, torture, kill, yeah.
Gotcha.
And then, he was thinking, okay, I got the right, he was trying to push a Zodiac suspect. So yeah, he got in trouble. So I think Jack is also trying to point out in many ways that your system is flawed, including this guy who's saying that, that all these guys are linked in as one.
And we hadn't really seen a lot of bind, torture, kill in the acts of the Zodiac killer unless you go all the way back to, say, Black Dahlia era. I mean, she clearly looked like she had been tortured based on all of the damage to her face and her mouth being cut and all of those things. But as you got into the Zodiac stuff, you didn't really see torture so much as a tactic, as much as you saw just blunt force trauma, strangulation, and shootings and stabbings. So I'm not sure why he would think that bind, torture, kill would be up the alley of the Zodiac killer, especially if he didn't believe that he was involved with the Black Dahlia stuff. Now, if you believe that he was in part of the Black Dahlia stuff, then I could see, yes, you putting those two together, but I don't know what his take is on Black Dahlia. Anyways, we have another murder in Florence, in Italy, of a couple on 29th of July, 1984. Law student Claudio Stefanacci and barmaid Pia Gilda Rontini, 18, were shot and stabbed in Stefanacci's Fiat Panda parked in a wood I can't even speak now. There's so many different versions of language here. Parked in a woodland area near Vicchio. The killer removed Rottini's pubic area and left breast. So now we have this might be why I put that last one, booed, in there, because we're seeing the missing breast and the pubic area. This stuff is kind of really reminiscent of Black Dahlia. Says there were reports of a strange man who had been following the couple in an ice cream parlor some hours before the murder. A close friend of Rontini called that she had confided that she had been bothered by an unpleasant man while working at the bar. That's a very interesting take, but yeah, I mean, removing the pubic area and the left breast, we had, I don't remember which breast was damaged on Black Dahlia, but we did see them manipulate the pubic area and the breast.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? All right. Well, that brings us to Laura Miller, and we've only got about 4 minutes, so I'm not sure if we want to hop into this right now or discuss some of the things that we've been talking about thus far. What do you think, Harriette?
Yeah, let's just talk about what thus far, because there's a lot going on in there, and it looks like you had one of the victims from Stockholm, Sweden, and the SLA, all that. A lot of people were thinking, and I was one of them, that the SLA was where you find James Kilgore, you're going to find the real Zodiac. And I'm seeing that Zodiac is, of course, just intel community things. And, you know, the missing body parts goes way back, and it's disgusting, but it may or may not always be code. You know, the things that I'm seeing from the 19th century, but also involving Stockholm, Sweden.
That's because you were saying that the UPI and API releases would indicate kind of the forensic information on location, placement of the body, things that were done, what they were wearing, and use that type of information to actually decode a solve, correct?
Yeah, and I was wondering, how could that be at 2 o'clock in the morning that they knew in the middle of nowhere, let's say Texas or even California, that the body was moved, and how would they know it was moved 22 feet to the north and et cetera? You know how? And this is where Robert Abel and his people come in. They were able to take pictures, and we're seeing it, that they were taking pictures from way above. If they were following these drug dealers and anybody connected, even if they killed somebody, they were able to see and watch them, because there were pictures constantly being taken then by our satellites. So then it made sense to me how they knew. And Jack said that they killed on a full moon. You would able to see in the middle of nowhere, Texas. If you've ever been to Texas, and I went there as a kid a couple of times, in the middle of nowhere and a full moon, it was almost like daylight. So
right. He talks about that in one of his letters as the Zodiac. Being able to see by the...
It made sense that they were able to see from the way up above and click the pictures, and then they would go back and see, well, the victim was dragged 22 feet to the north, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning or 2:40 in the morning. And
and I think that
like,
simple forensics also gives you, where a person was killed versus where a body was dumped, simply by the lack of blood. We are down to our last 30 seconds at this point. I think that was a very interesting take. Thank you, Harriette. I want to wish everybody a wonderful weekend, and we will be back next Friday. See you then. Thank you, Harriette, for being here today.
And I think I'll be on visually. Okay.
That'll be awesome. We'll see you then. Take care.
Oh,